Welcome to Consular Conversations at U.S. Embassy Kingston, where we answer your questions about visas, American citizen services, and more live. Today, I'm joined by Keisha from our non-immigrant visa section and Brandon from our fraud prevention unit. Today, we're going to be discussing H visas and how you can enjoy your H visa without fraud. Before we get into some questions, I want to tell you guys that we're going to be hosting a town hall here at the embassy regarding American citizen services and disaster preparedness. If you're interested in joining, it is Wednesday, May 28th at 3 p.m. for American citizens, and you can RSVP and get more information by emailing kingstonacs@state.gov. The email is on the screen. All right, before we get into other questions, Keisha, can you tell our audience what H visa is?
An H visa is where we have our non-agricultural workers and agricultural workers going to the U.S. to work temporarily for the U.S. employers.
Great, thank you. What are some examples of the non-agricultural visas that someone might have?
That's when they will work like in the hotels.
In hotels?
Yeah, and I think restaurants.
Great.
Too. Yes.
Thank you. And Brandon, what is the role of the fraud prevention unit, first of all, here at the embassy and specifically with H visas?
Well, thank you so much for having me today. Thrilled to be able to talk about H2s and fraud prevention. The fraud prevention unit in general is really responsible for maintaining the integrity of the visa process, whether it's immigrant visas, non-immigrant visas, or American citizen services when it comes to U.S. passports and applications for U.S. citizenship. So we conduct investigations into allegations of fraud or visa misuse, and we also work to ensure that all aspects of the visa process are being completed in accordance with U.S. law and regulations. So that includes the visa applicants that are coming to us to apply for the visa, to make sure all of the information provided to the embassy is accurate and true. And that also has to do with the information provided from the U.S. petitioners in the United States, the U.S. companies that are filing applications to request workers come to the United States. So we're looking at U.S. petitioners, we're looking at local employment agencies in Jamaica, and we're looking at applicants for U.S. visas to make sure all three of those entities, all three of those parts of the process are in compliance with U.S. law and following our guidelines.
Great, thank you. Our first question kind of aligns with that. Omar from X asks, I've heard several different tips where the U.S. Embassy encourages people to report fraud. What safety measures can the U.S. Embassy provide for persons who wish to report fraud? And how can Jamaicans feel safe that their names will be kept confidential?
Right, so if you do suspect fraud, we always ask people to reach out to kingstonfpu@state.gov to provide any information that you have that you think may be of interest to us. Mm-hmm. We always keep tips confidential 100%. We never share them outside of the fraud prevention unit, not even with other members in the consular section. And we use that information to begin investigations, to feed information or share it. So it's always, kept in confidence.
Good to know. Thank you. Keisha, Daniel from Facebook wants to know, can his dependents, like his family members, work if he is on an H visa, or is he the only one who can work?
He's the only one that can work.
Okay, no dependents.
H visas, yes, but they can accompany him.
Okay,
if they're
great.
qualified to do so. Yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Could I explain a little bit about some protections that we have in place for H2s? Mm-hmm. So H2 visas are very, very popular at the U.S. Embassy in Jamaica. We're actually number 2 in the world for H visas, right behind Mission Mexico. So just last year, we issued 5,000 H2A visas and 12,000 H2B visas. So 17,000 total. So it's a very popular program. It's a very successful program that benefits both of our economies in the U.S. and Jamaica. And a huge part of what we do in the fraud prevention unit when it comes to H2s is make sure that all workers at the time of their interview and especially afterwards when they're traveling on their visa, number one, we want to make sure that they're using their visa compliantly. So that means they're traveling on the dates that they're supposed to. they're traveling and working at the place that they're supposed to work and in the job that they're supposed to have. And all of that information is provided to the embassy at the time of their interview. And then that's what they're supposed to go and do. We also work really hard to make sure that all workers are informed about their rights and protections as H-2 workers in the United States. We give these cards to all applicants. These are the newer cards that we use. They have QR codes on them, and applicants can scan them to go online to learn more about these protections. And sometimes we'll even give this pamphlet, Know Your Rights. It contains a lot of really helpful information about your rights and protections. So we encourage all applicants to read that after their visa appointment.
Thank you. Thank you. Keisha, back to you. From Instagram, someone asked, are all H-2B applicants required to do an interview?
No. You have returning applicants that does not need to come in for an interview, but you do have those first timers that has to.
Okay.
And so not everyone will need to come in for an interview.
Okay. But if it's their first time getting it, they probably they would need to do an interview.
More likely they're going to need one.
Okay. Great. All right. Let's see. For either of you, Jade from Facebook asks, I'm currently in the United States on another non-immigrant status. Do I have to depart the U.S. to obtain an H-1B visa, or can I do it from in the States?
You can apply to, or your employer, rather, whoever you would like to work for, they must file an application for you to adjust your current status in the United States from, I'm assuming it's a visitor's visa, a B1, B2 visa, to an H visa, H-1B, I think you said. And you're not allowed to begin working until that application for the adjustment of your non-immigrant status is approved. Okay, great.
All right. Another question, fraud related, Brandon. Charmaine from Facebook asks, in 1992, I entered the US on a fake visa. I'm now well established in Jamaica. I've traveled compliantly to several countries. I wish to apply for a US immigrant visa. Will this issue from my past jeopardize my chances?
It's hard to say because everybody's case and the individual circumstances can vary and they're different. So I don't want to give a definite answer. But what I can say is that your history, your immigration history, any criminal history, any prior applications, that will all be reviewed by the consular officer at the time of your visa interview. And if you are not eligible for the visa, you'll be informed during that interview and they'll tell you why. If you are eligible, the consular officer will approve it and then issue the visa. So if you are interested and you believe that you qualify, I would say just apply and then, we'll see from there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. Keisha, Tony from X asks, what happens to my H-1B what happens if my H-1B status expires while I have a pending application to change to another non-immigrant status? Is there enough information there to answer the question? I think they're asking about if they need to leave the United States between visas, if one is expiring, but they don't have the next one yet.
And they have applied for
But they've applied, yeah.
That's more like adjusting status. I think
So
adjusting.
Like an
Right.
extension or an adjustment of status.
Right.
Generally, if you have a pending adjustment or extension of status, you're allowed to remain in the United States until the decision is made on that application. But you want to make sure that you file that application before your admit until date passes. Your admit until date is determined by Customs and Border Protection when you're admitted to the United States. And if you don't file that extension or adjustment application and you don't depart the United States prior to that date, you may be considered an overstay and in violation of the terms of your visa.
Okay, great. So this question is actually about J visas, which are another type of employment visa. Tommy asks, can I work for an employer other than my program sponsor on my J1 visa? For either of you.
So you can, as long as your sponsor in the United States approves you to begin working at that second job. So if you're on J1 summer work travel, for example, you have a job that you're already going to, in order to apply and work part-time at another job, your program sponsor needs to approve that before you can begin working, keeping in mind that the job that you went to the United States to do on your J1 is your primary responsibility.
Okay, great. Thank you. Keisha, someone from Facebook asked, what documents do I need to bring to my H visa interview?
Your petition, the I-797 petition that you're given, and of course your passports, one photo, like a passport size photograph. Make sure the background is white. And your previous passports, if you had visas before.
Oh, US
you
visas?
take that as well, yes.
Okay.
I believe that's it.
Okay.
And any other additional documents that you think will support your application.
Okay, great. Is there a list of possible documentation on our embassy website that they can refer to, or on USCIS website?
I think there is. Yes.
Okay.
There should be.
Yeah.
I always recommend that everyone bring documentation about the job opportunity. For example, a lot of applicants that we have come in for the H-2B visa, they're going to work in restaurants or hotels, or maybe at a supermarket or convenience store. And the person in the United States that's petitioning for them is a staffing company. And so they're not really going to work for the petitioner at the petitioner's address. The petitioner, as a staffing company, will have contracts with these end clients and then send the workers to work for them, right? And so it's important for the consular officer to be aware of where you will actually be employed. And that information should be given to the applicant prior to their visa interview by their employer in the form of an employment contract. They should know how much they'll be paid, where exactly they'll physically be working, what the hours will be, any deductions from their wages, costs of transportation. All of those things should be obtained in writing prior to the visa interview. And it's always good for the applicant to have a copy of that information and to be aware of that information, so that if anything happens in the United States that's not in accordance with what was previously agreed to, they have something that they can refer back to.
Okay, great. Along those lines, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but someone also asked, how do I know if an employment opportunity is valid and real and not just someone kind of fishing for money?
So we always require that applicants work through registered overseas employment agencies. The Ministry of Labor and Social Security in Jamaica is responsible for maintaining a list of all licenses that are granted to employment agencies in Jamaica to place workers in jobs overseas. So I would refer them to the Ministry of Labor's website, which has a list of all licensed employment agencies. And also the Department of Labor maintains a list of foreign labor recruiters for Jamaica, the U.S. Department of Labor. And it's important to always work through a registered company or directly with a U.S. petitioner. Some U.S. petitioners will recruit their workers directly. And we ask, under the Jamaica Temporary Worker Security Program that we rolled out in January, it's required that all applicants list their local recruiter in the DS-160 under the section that says, did anyone assist you with filling out this application? That recruiter information is required to be listed there in order for the application to be considered for approval and be processed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Edwin Walton on Facebook asks, my non-immigrant visa expired about 2 years ago. Do I have to return to Jamaica for an interview? He didn't specify what type of non-immigrant visa, but maybe you guys can touch on if you need to return to Jamaica to interview.
2 years?
Yes.
Since it has been expired?
Yes.
I think we're down to 12 months now, which is a year for it to be considered a renewal.
Okay.
So yes, he will need to return to Jamaica.
To interview.
He's in the United States?
He doesn't specify, but it seems not in Jamaica. Yeah.
Well, if you can't apply for a visa from the United States, right? So you would need to apply from somewhere overseas.
Okay.
Whether that's Jamaica or somewhere else that we have a mission, right?
Right. Okay. Ray J from X wants to know if the embassy has a list of recommended service providers who assist people with applying and filling out visa applications.
No, we don't.
We do not.
We don't get involved.
No.
No involvement.
It's a separate. So we do have, as I said before, the Department of Labor and MLSS has that list of authorized overseas employment agencies. Those are the agencies that U.S. petitioners will contract to help them recruit people for their job opportunities. Those we have a list for. When it comes to just travel agencies, someone you're going to pay a small fee to fill out your application for you, we don't have a list of recommended agents for that.
Thank you. We've had a couple questions along these lines. O'Neill from X asks, my sponsor terminated my participation in my visitor exchange program. I'm not sure what to do. Can I just switch to another program? And someone else asked along the lines of what happens if I get fired or decide to leave mid contract. So if you guys could touch on that, Brandon.
If your SEVIS status, which is it's your profile in the student exchange and visitor information system that your U.S. sponsor will maintain with the Department of Homeland Security. If your SEVIS status is terminated, you're required to depart the United States. You can't switch to another job on the J-1 program. You would have to come back and you reapply for a different visa for a different type of job opportunity.
Okay. This one is more about visas in general, but we can touch on it. Jamie from Facebook says, I just received my visiting visa in the mail. I discovered it has an error on it. What should I do? Keisha?
You could send an email
Okay.
to kingstonniv@state.gov, letting us know that there's an error on the visa. What we will do is give you a date and time to, matter of fact, you can drop it off Monday to Friday between the hours of 1 to 2.
Okay.
Except for the US holidays and the Jamaican holidays. So it's just a matter of dropping off the passport between those hours and we will get it corrected. Yes.
Okay.
But it has to be issued within a year. You have never traveled on it. Right.
Okay.
We also have the Visa Navigator on our website. I think it'll lead them to the correct subject
Email.
line.
Okay,
Subject
yes.
line.
Right. For
Yes.
yeah.
And I think you can find that information on the screen as well.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Anna from Facebook asks, my employer asked to hold on to my passport while my employment in the States, which felt a little fishy to me. Is that an indicator of fraud, Brandon?
Absolutely. You must be able to retain your travel and identity documents, such as your passport, at all times.
Okay.
Nobody, including your employer or any other third party, should ever maintain control over those documents. And that's a really important thing to touch on because it gets to an issue regarding labor trafficking. We want to make sure that all workers at all times are aware of the conditions and the terms of their employment, and that they can at any time leave that place of employment and leave that job opportunity if things aren't going according to the law, right? If their rights are being violated, if they're being mistreated, they're encountering problems, they're not being paid on time, for example, they need to be able to maintain control of their passport so that they can go home if they need to. And they should definitely reach out to the embassy at kingstonfpu@state.gov to report things such as that. And there are also hotlines that they can reach out to in the United States. The Department of Labor has a hotline, and the National Human Trafficking Hotline is also available. It's 1-888-373-7888. And that's available 24/7.
Great. Thank you so much. Susie from Instagram wants to know, how do I waive the 2-year rule for my J-1 visa? I'm assuming that she's touching on the 2-year rule to then apply for an immigrant visa. Do you guys have information on that?
You need to file an I-612, I believe the form is called. It's an application for a waiver of the foreign residency requirement, and it's submitted to the Department of Homeland Security, who will then reach out to the Jamaican government and request if they approve waiving that requirement. Yeah.
Can you also share with our audience what that 2-year requirement is in case people aren't aware?
Sure. So certain types of J1 visas require that you reside in your home country for 2 years at the conclusion of your program. One such visa program under J1 that has that requirement is the J1 teacher program, for example. So if you have a 3-year J1 visa to go and teach in the United States, that carries the 212E requirement, which we call the foreign residency requirement. And it requires that after your program finishes, unless the requirement's waived, that you live in Jamaica or somewhere else outside the United States for at least 2 years before you can be eligible for an H, an L, or another J visa.
Okay, great. So this is kind of related. Someone called VoiceBox from X asks, I currently have a J1 visa. I would like to convert to an HB1. Is that possible? So based on the 2-year rule, it sounds like they would have to get it waived or wait.
It depends.
Okay.
It depends on the J1 visa that they have. Some programs under J1, like summer work travel, aren't subject to the 212E requirement. So we would have to evaluate that case with more information. Yeah.
Great. We have another question. Once I complete my work program or I decide to leave early, can I stay in the United States or do I have to leave? Do you
I believe they have up to 30 days
30 days.
after the program ends to leave.
This is for
Yes.
J1?
J1.
They didn't specify, yeah.
Well, it depends, because the J1 summer work travel, they do have that 30-day
Okay.
window on each end, right? The beginning and the end.
But it's also important for them to return at the start of their school.
Right.
Oh,
For the
Some of them
J1s.
has longer periods than others, depending on the end date that is on their earliest 2019. So they have to pay attention to that, but they have to be back for the start of school.
okay.
When it comes to H's, generally the U.S. Department of State will make a request that Customs and Border Protection grant each worker a grace period of about 10 days, I believe it is, so that they'll have that time to finish their job, pack their things and then return. So that admit until date is really important to pay attention to when you enter the United States. Just make sure you depart by that date.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Someone else asks, actually, Edwin got back to us. He says that he's actually in the Cayman Islands right now, and he had an H-1B that expired 2 years ago. But for our applicants in the Cayman Islands, just generally, they still need to come to Kingston to interview, correct?
It depends.
It's 2 years ago, you said?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
So
yeah.
it's 12 months is
Okay.
what it is now.
Okay.
But right.
Yeah.
Not sure about the H1Bs
Well-
though. Those are for B1, B2s. The 12
It's
months
actually,
period.
I think it's for all visa classes now,
Okay.
12 months.
the 12-month.
Yeah. We can't give information about specific cases because, as you can see,
Right.
things vary. So please feel free to reach out to us via email about your specific case, and we can get into those with you.
Right.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, with that, I think we have concluded our questions for the H visa program and fraud indicators. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our guests for answering questions.
Of course.
And make sure to tune in next month for another Consular Conversations at U.S. Embassy Kingston. Bye.
Bye.